Your game
Your game.
Your game.
Your game.
is about to get a wake-up call.
Hello and welcome to the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. Alongside company founder Kerry Moher, I am Brad Fritsch, former PGA Tour player, current Korn Ferry Tour member, and Red Rooster founding partner. Red Rooster Golf. Join us in waking up your golf glove game, an oft-neglected part of your equipment and yet ever present on each and every shot you hit. Learn to manage your glove. Make sure it's there to help you, and change it when it's not. Red Rooster Golf, wake up, shake up, step up, and give. Kerry, how's it going?
Brad, it couldn't be going much better. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. This is episode 1 of the Red Rooster Golf Podcast, kind of our intro to our audience. Today, we're going to talk about the company, obviously, but first get kind of back to our golf roots, where we started, where we played in college, what we do now, and just our golf journey on our way to founding the company.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because we've been on a few podcasts, and I think we realize it's such a great medium for storytelling. So, we want to start today by giving a little bit of backstory on, our golf backstory, the Red Rooster golf backstory, but really just using this platform as an opportunity to dig in and share with our audience. There's certain things that, we can't, capture in a YouTube post or an Instagram reel. Sometimes you need to catch it in this audio form. So that's what the Red Rooster Golf Podcast will be all about. And let's dig in and share a bit of our golf backstory and the Red Rooster Golf backstory.
All right, let's do it.
Let's first I want to go over some of the questions that I get, especially sort of in regards to you and I. So I'm gonna kind of take you in the Wayback Machine here. So, give us your start in golf. Where did you get started? How old were you, and what was your first sort of memories of the game?
Okay. My parents tell me that I started when I was 5 years old. We lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on an Air Force base, and my parents took me out, and I think they counted every shot. It was something crazy, like 215 or something like that. But I started very young. When we moved to Ottawa, they got me on the junior membership at Carleton Golf and Yacht Club. I think I was 8. They made an exception. Usually it was 10 was the minimum age, but I went through all the etiquette training and everything. So I started very young, started playing tournaments, I think when I was 12 or 13, maybe, throughout the Ottawa Valley system, and was always just a pretty decent player, and then played a bunch of junior golf, traveled a lot, played in Canadian junior championships, and then went off to college and played, which you did as well. So we met when we were about 16, 17 years old, but when did you start playing golf?
Much later. I remember I was probably like 10, 11 when I first sort of swung a club. I remember we got a family membership at the Newcastle Golf Club. It was just sort of southeast of Toronto, and we didn't play a lot. It was a bit of a drive. I remember my dad used to drop myself and my brother off, and we would play like 54 holes or whatever, just play out there all day. But it was rare, maybe like once a week or twice a week, would kind of drop us off. And then there were a few years where we didn't play much. And we moved to Ottawa when I was in the 7th grade. And I didn't join a club or really start playing seriously until I was 16. When I was 15, I worked on a sheep farm, Century Lane Farms, and worked 6 days a week, worked a lot. It was a lot of fun. And then when I was 16, I started working at McDonald's a couple days a week, and I joined Canada Lakes. And that was really kind of where my golf journey started. There was a really great junior program out there, great pro, Terry Kolar. He um, got me interested. There was junior intersectionals. There was lots of competition. There was always a great game, and there was a few, good examples to look up to. There were some guys who had some scholarships in the area. Just a really strong group. We had a bunch of Division I players, and I kind of my game quickly got better, and I kind of got the bug there. So a little bit different. We kind of came around to it at different times. I remember when I finally started playing some tournaments. I was 17 was the first time when I was 16, I played some interclub stuff. My first summer, I was, it came to me pretty quick once I started playing and playing with good players. Like I could break 80 that first summer of full playing. I'd played a little bit up to that point, and all of a sudden I was playing a lot and playing around some good players. And at 17, I started playing some of the local tournaments, and that's kind of where we met on that kind of circuit and playing at that level. And fond memories of that. I think maybe one of the kind of accolades I could give you was, Brad was one of the top players in the area. So I was a guy who could shoot in the mid to high 70s. So in junior golf, that's usually, you're sort of hanging around. But Brad, you were always in kind of the low 70s, high 60s. And I just remember that like people wanted to play with you because they would play their best. You were one of those guys that sort of um, towed the line. Like the group, there was a real positive energy. You were a good player. You were probably the low player more often than not. And yet everyone kind of played their better round. Whereas I was a bit of a roller coaster. Like when I could get around with you or some of the better guys, I could kind of, hitch my wagon to you guys and you'd kind of pull me along. And some guys would kind of take you down. You could go
I
to a dark place.
I could see that. Junior golf is very unpredictable, and you get some real characters out there, guys who lose their cool really fast. I mean, to be honest, I always thought of myself as someone who did lose their cool really fast out there. I'll accept your accolades, but before we move on, I will say that high 60s never happened to me in junior events because I never broke par before I got to college. So maybe you remember me in the 71, 72 range. I'll accept that. But yeah, that's one of my kind
I'm
of
giving you
notable
too much
stats.
credit, Brett.
That's right. That's right. But I always thought it was interesting that I never broke par before I went to a Division I school, albeit I walked on, no scholarship. But yeah, that was one of those things that I was kind of I was behind the eight ball a little bit when I went down to college, and all these guys are shooting under par, and I hadn't done it yet. So that was one of the things I had to kind of overcome in my head mentally, anyway.
That's
So
actually really surprising to me because like I remember playing the circuit. You were always one of the better players in the area. And one of the things we used to do, and this was some of the really fond memories, was traveling to these different tournaments. And we were in Ottawa, and so Ottawa was part of actually the Quebec Golf Association, sort of right across the pond. And so most of our tournaments were in and around the Montreal area, or even into deeper into Quebec. And so the Ottawa contingent used to travel well, and it was a really good group, a lot of really good players in the area, and that was a lot of fun. And you would go for these events, and you'd be there, no matter how you played. So we would often, if you didn't make the cut, you'd be caddying for somebody. And I remember caddying for you in the Duke of Kent one year, and I hadn't played that well in the first round, and caddying for you, and just realizing like how much better your game was than mine, and just how when you we would talk through things, and it's funny with our recent Corn Ferry event. You said what you were going to do. You generally did it. I could tell you what I was hoping to do, and sometimes I could execute on it. But it was right. There was a difference whether you were breaking par at that point or not. You were always sort of hovering around par, and just your game was on a different level at that point. And it was but it was fun, right? Like junior golf was a great time. No matter what the score was, it was a blast just to travel to those events and compete, and just a great group of people.
Yeah, I think one time you and I and a few others had a little bit more fun than we should have. I remember at the Quebec match play in Montreal, um, we decided to go out on the town one night, and on the way back, I'll never forget the look in the cab because we had kind of made a decision at whatever club we were at. Yeah, let's have some fun on the way back, and you gave us this look in the taxi as we were getting out, and we told the taxi driver to pull up to this certain parking lot, and it wasn't the parking lot of our hotel, it was the adjacent hotel, and we all decided to make a run for it. And this could have been the birth, the genesis of Red Rooster right here. um, I'll never forget. We all took off in different directions, and you and me and another guy, we tried to cut through this wooded area to our hotel, and you tripped over this falling log, and I don't know if you twisted your ankle or whatever, but it was like a wartime story. You were telling us to go on without me, just leave me, and both of us yelled like, "We're not leaving you!" And we propped you up on our shoulders and we started carrying you, and we got into the hotel, and it kind of devolved from there. The police came. The taxi driver was very, very angry. There were tears on some guys' faces. They were very worried. I think we got out of it with the $50 cab fare, but the blue lights, I think, scared the bejesus out of all of us for for one night. And I've never done anything like that again, but I'll never forget that, hauling you out of the woods, saying, "We're not leaving you behind, man." Um, but this will be an interesting story down the road because there's kind of a connection. It's kind of a full circle connection as we tell our story. A couple of the same characters are involved, and the city, same city as well. So um, moving on, we both went to college. You went to Kentucky State. I went to Campbell. We played our 4 years. You went on to business school at the University of Georgia. I turned pro. Struggled for a bunch of years, and then we connected years later. I don't think I saw you for, I think, 10 years. And then,
Honestly, I think that there was two connections. One of them was just when I graduated from Kentucky State University, and I mean, I had an amazing time there and had some awesome teammates, an incredible coach, and it was a great program. We competed really well, and one of our good friends who plays a part in Red Rooster and in some of our backstory, Nick Starchuk, he was one of my teammates there. We had a lot of success, a lot of fun. And I remember when I graduated, I moved back to Ottawa. I got this high tech gig, and I was dating a girl who lived who was originally from Greensboro, North Carolina. And you went in the Monday qualifier, and I forget what you shot, a 65.
yep,
Um,
65.
I was going down to that event. I was going down. She and her family used to go there, and and we ran into another good friend of ours, Tommy Moore, at that event,
Yep.
and who had gone to school in the area. And I got a chance to follow you in the second round there. And I remember catching up with you after, and you got me onto the driving range. I remember you were hitting beside Aaron Badley, and it was it was a thing. But probably between that was right out of college, and probably the next time we connected was in Montreal at the Canadian Open.
Canadian Open. So that's from 2001, April of 2001, the Greater Greensboro Chrysler Classic, to June of 2014, Canadian
Wow.
Open at Royal Montreal. So same Montreal connection.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I
Not too
saw
far
you.
from the scene of the crime.
That's right. That's right. So I'm playing the Canadian Open there as a PGA Tour member. I can't remember what I shot the first round. Probably, I'm not even sure, but I know I had this. You can tell the story because you tell it better. But I definitely made a putt on the last hole to make the cut on the number. But you had been there, I think, the day before as well. So I saw you there,
I
talked to
got
you.
to see your second nine. on the first day. You were right around even par, maybe one under, kind of right in the mix. Figured that's around where the cut line was going to be, and it was great. It was a bunch of Ottawa folks following you, and came back in the second day and followed the whole round. And you were kind of tenuously on the cut line all day.
Story of my life, yes.
I guess that's how it often is. I mean, you're always feel like you're just barely inside, or you're barely outside, or you're right on it. Like no matter
I was
how.
always, it was three different things. Either I was playing excellent and had no doubt, I was right on it, or I was way out of it. Never did I really have to, I can birdie two of the last three. No, never that. It was either, okay, par, 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 and you're in, or way out of it, or like 8 clear. So it's, my golf life has been fairly stressful, I would say. Um, but yeah, I was coming down the stretch. I don't think I made any bogeys coming down the stretch, but I needed a birdie. And 18 at Royal Montreal is a real tough hole. Drove it in the right rough. You'll tell the story that there was no lie. It wasn't a great lie, and I had to hit it uphill and chase it onto the green because there's no way I was getting a club on it to fly it on the green. And I managed to get it on the green. And
It was a nasty lie. I was at the tee shot. I saw you hit it right. The rough was wild.
Yeah, it was.
And this was just an awful lie. And I walked up to it, and I mean, you were a long way out. I mean, you were close to 200, I think. And just for me, I was like, well, that's the end of that.
That's much.
That. From there, I went up to the grandstands and was like, just going to kind of cheer you through.
Yep. No, and it was one of those where I thought, like, if it's this club, then it can be one more, because it has to be, because I got to get it up there. And I chased it up on the green. It was a great shot, but I still had an uphill double breaking, 50, 55 foot or something like that. And I got the best green reader in the business.
When I tell it, it's like 80 to 100
I know
feet.
it is. I know it is. And I also shot 65s as a 14-year-old to you, but
Sure.
I digress. But I hit the putt, and I hit the center of the hole, jumped up in the air. Not me, the ball. The ball comes down in the hole, gave it a massive fist pump. The crowd, I don't know if they knew what was going on or what. I mean, we had standard bearers, scorings there, but it was a big putt for me. I knew it would at least make me have a chance. And I know both of our favorite stories from that day is when my dad came back from getting ice cream. I said, "Well, do you think that's enough?" And he goes, "Well, you didn't make that putt, did you?" And I was like, "Where were you?" He's like, "Oh, I was getting ice cream for Doug." I'm like, "Oh, thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for hanging in there, Dad." So he was pleased that I made it, and I waited all afternoon and ended up getting in to the weekend. And then I played flawless on the weekend. I was 67, 64, no bogeys either day on a par 70, and finished tied for, I believe it was tied for 8th or 9th. But it's so funny, golf, one shot is worth a lot. That one shot was worth $145,000. It's crazy, isn't it? And I thought, outside of the top two guys at the end of the week, I thought I had a shot at really finishing, third or fourth if I had just gotten a few more to go. Obviously played great, but two guys kind of ran away with it. I think it was Tim Clark and Jim Furyk, something like that.
Yeah, it was.
But I had a chance, like one or two shots would have been another 100, 200,000, another few spots on the leaderboard. So, but that was that was what, 12, 13 years between kind of connecting. And then a bunch of years later, we connect again.
Yeah, buddy's trip with with a bunch of the same guys that ran from that cab in Montreal.
That's right.
And this trip, we paid, as far as I recall, we paid for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun. It was a chance. It was our good buddy Tyler Butler and Nick Starchuk. These are this was all sort of part of our junior crew, so that's kind of cool that that far ahead. We're still, connecting, and it's really good golfers. I'm probably the highest handicap of the bunch, and Nick is a top instructor in Toronto. Um, Tyler's now, won a couple of club championships. I mean, he's just an awesome athlete, and that was just a really fun trip, kind of bucket list golf. But that's really where the Red Rooster concept kind of really got in the back of my head, because I got a little rattled on that trip. And
Yep.
maybe you.
Seventh hole, Dormy Club. It's a par 3. We're playing the back tees because we're men. And it's about 240 yards that day. So you're trying to, I don't know if you're feathering a 3-wood, but it's not all of a 3-wood, and you're setting up to it. And I saw your glove and this thing. I don't remember what brand it was, but it was a
Nike.
Nike. Okay. So Nike glove from, I mean, it might have been from the late 90s. It was so old.
It was had a bit of a retro look.
Yeah, a lot of the black streaks on it, couple
I think it had
holes.
some neon.
Yep. I mean, it was in rough shape. So I gave you a little bit, and we finished up our trip. We played Dormy Club, 2 rounds at Forest Creek, and 1 at my club, 12 Oaks. And you guys go home. I just drive an hour back to my place, and we keep in contact for a while. And about a year and a half later, you give me a call. I'm on the way to a Monday qualifier, and you start asking me about gloves. And I didn't know where you were going. You're asking me, how often do I change them? How important do I think they are? What do I find important in a golf glove? All this kind of stuff. And I didn't know where you were going with it. But I had 8 hours to kill, Raleigh to Columbus. So I was just, hey, good to hear from you, Kerry. We'll talk again, I guess. And I shot 8 under, missed by 1. And on the way back, you called me again, and you kind of pitched me on an idea.
Yeah, I'd been ruminating on the idea from that trip. I just, I remember, Tyler had a bunch of gloves. Of course, Nick did. You had a pile of new ones, and that was the only thing I hadn't thought of for that trip. We had been looking forward to that trip for months, and I'd spent thousands of dollars to be there. I had the, latest, greatest gear, balls, everything, apparel, and I had a glove I'd used for dozens of rounds, probably at that point. And it did kind of cause me to think, like why wouldn't I have thought of picking up a few fresh gloves? I used to get, gloves in college, and since then it just sort of didn't seem that important to me. And then I saw how you treated them, and how my playing partners did, and it just kind of got in my head, like, why wouldn't I have considered this? This is probably a more important piece of equipment. I didn't seem to be valuing it, and I was definitely just sort of ruminating on it. And every once in a while, I would come back around to the idea of trying to solve the problem. And I think it was like a deeper issue. It wasn't simply, that I couldn't afford a glove. It's that I almost like didn't want to reward myself, or how would I know when to replace a glove? What's the right timing? Admittedly, it's a bit easier for a touring pro, right? Like what was your experience on tour with gloves?
Yeah, it depends on the tour. I remember you could kind of go 2, 4, 6. You get 2 for a Canadian Tour event, 4 for a Corn Ferry event, and then 6 or as many as you want for a PGA Tour event. I would usually use a glove in competition for 2 rounds. First and second round, same glove, and then weekend, a different new glove. After that, they'd go in kind of the practice round rotation, the warm up rotation, whatever. But I mean, they're definitely more disposable for a tour pro because they're given to us. But again, use it on every shot. So it's a pretty important piece of equipment. It's designed for a purpose, right? And if you kind of think about it, you wouldn't want to use it if it's not working the way that it's intended to. So I can kind of follow your train of thought. But you've been stewing on this idea for a while. But you're a busy guy. You've got other stuff going on. You've got your axe throwing places, both in Ottawa and in Athens, Georgia. Don't have a ton of time on your hands. However, a kind of an inconvenient thing for everyone came up, which was COVID.
Yeah, right. I mean, yes, my axe throwing venues, lumberjacks, they were closed, and I just couldn't put more energy into them. There was nothing I could do. It was a helpless feeling, and golf was booming. Everybody was playing. It was one of the few things you could do. I was enjoying it. Everybody was, and it got me thinking and gave me a little bit of time to come back around on this idea. And I think when I called you, I obviously really valued your opinion. I'm not, admittedly wasn't a golf glove expert by any stretch, but I wanted to bounce the idea off you. But everything kind of came down to, and I think to be fair, you were all in. You liked the idea. It was just a matter of like, could you make a really good glove? Like, how complicated is this?
Right. What do you do? Where do you go?
Right.
Starting at zero, basically, both of us were. And what was the thing that I told you? Like, it has to be really good. Because I know that there's even some major brands that make not so great gloves, and then they have a premium glove that you pay a lot for. So you didn't want to be stuck in that bottom level, right? Like, let's make a great glove. How do we do it? Where do we go? First, we had to turn the inside of a bunch of gloves out and find where they were made. The label's there every time.
Yeah, I guess that was the easy part. It was somewhat surprising. I hadn't given it any thought. Could well have been China for all I knew at that point, but all of them except one brand are made in Indonesia, and so that was kind of the easy part. It was like, oh, looks like golf gloves are made in Indonesia. Finding a factory there, that was really, really difficult, and
You
it
couldn't
makes
Google
sense.
couldn't Google search it?
Well, do it. See what you come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could, but you just, you know, in hindsight now, I was a little bit naive, and the biggest brands work with sort of private label, and they're off the grid. You
Yeah.
can't find them. They don't want to be found. And and who you can find, you don't want to find. They aren't the top brand. The biggest, best manufacturers are, off the grid. And we didn't know that at the time, but as we did some digging, I could tell that there's just a piece missing. So fortunately, I'd done some work in some other countries, and I'd worked through different trade commissions. And there's typically, someone whose job in one country is to facilitate trade with another country. So I
You
was able
talking
to
about our main man Sturmius?
Sturmius.
Man, we should give him a commission.
He definitely deserves it. He saved the day, because I really wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, there's a language barrier, there's a time difference, and I don't know what I'm doing, to be fair. So once I connected with Stern, that was one of the biggest, um, I'd say, sort of fortunate events, because just he was a great guy. He's originally from Indonesia. He knew right away leatherworks are a really big industry. He knew exactly the region and possibly the city where the best gloves would be made. He knew where the best cabretta leather, sheep skins were tanned, and he figured that's where the production would be. And he was able to do some things that I couldn't do on my own. And I started to realize, like, the more I discovered, the more I realized I didn't know. I thought really have to get over there
Yeah.
to meet some people, because he had set up a couple of Zoom calls, and I just felt like, I knew I needed like an interpreter, and I needed a guide.
Yeah. So you get your business visa, which was a whole different ball of wax because of COVID, and You had to get all your flights arranged before you get your visa, which was, I mean, during that time, I'm sure a lot of people remember it was just really difficult to get around. Um, but you book everything, you get your business visa, you go over there, and it's ghost town city. They don't want to hear from Kerry Moher. Even though you have appointments, you're kind of turned away at the door. You're like, "Hey, nice to meet you. Take care now."
Oh yeah, I mean, I went in, I had the interpreter with me. They've set up all these meetings that I otherwise couldn't get on my own, and I'm coming over figuring, I'm going to how many deals am I going to sign? And I remember the first meeting, and I was so optimistic. I was so like uppy. I was so excited. And I go to this first meeting and I had a full face shield and a mask on underneath, or all these, this is really like sort of in the middle of COVID. And I go to these first meetings, and that was playing into it too, where I could just feel right away, ooh, this isn't going anywhere. I'm
Yeah.
not getting past the front door. It was a handshake. Thanks for coming. I know you've come a long way. Wishing you all the best. We couldn't be busier. Best of luck with your idea. And it was like, okay, well, maybe these guys are busy, but someone's going to want this business. And that happened. That first day, it was basically three strikes.
Right.
And the second one was, I was still optimistic. The third one was like pretty devastating. I was like, wow, maybe this isn't going to happen. Maybe this is telling me something. Maybe this isn't possible.
But you were there for 10 days, so you thought you'd give it another go with the same people. And fortunately, it was like a Seinfeld Costanza thing. You just willed your way into their life.
I had a lot of time on my hands. I was like, well, I'm here for 10. I mean, I had a lot of meetings. I started to shift some things around because some of the places, to be honest, I didn't want to go. So the places that were turning me away, I was definitely interested in. Some that, I had longer meetings with. I knew they weren't some of the top manufacturers. You could just tell by the facilities and by it really comes down to quality control and processes. And so, whittled it down to kind of three that I thought I'd really like to work with, and just thought, okay, I don't have to, get a partner here, but I'm going to get some learning. So let me just
Yeah.
turn this into like, can I just, run some ideas? Can I just learn from you? And the more I was coming at them without sort of trying to get business done and just sort of asking questions, the more they realized how serious I was.
And it
How
turned and it turns out that the the number one target and the best manufacturer ended up being our partner in the future. And I think that's probably a pretty decent testament to your intuition because, again, like you said, you didn't know much about golf gloves or what it takes or whatever. Um, but we ended up with the best manufacturer. And it didn't take nothing to get in there, see who else that they produce for. It took a lot of guts, and it took a lot of trust on their part. And I don't know if I want to say it was lucky, but I think you felt lucky coming back that they kind of let you into their factory, opened up their vault as you called it, and in the end we got an awesome partner.
yeah, once I got into the glove vault, I got to see like how varied gloves were, knowing that we could really build our own with their guidance and with their insight, but that every glove manufacturer makes a slightly to very different golf glove. I mean, glove hands are like snowflakes. I mean, no two are identical. Sizes, there's a range of styles, where you put stitch, what kind of leather to use, what grade, the thickness, different synthetic. There was just I was excited because I could see we could really put our stamp in it. ultimately we could make, a differentiated product, and then we could make something that was really good. So that was, we could kind of check that box that we could make something that was as good as the top brands in the game, because I saw the top brands in the game. So I knew we were
Exactly.
finding a partner who had done this for a lot longer than we had, was willing to be our guide. And if we're starting today, we can't do it.
Right. They
Um,
wouldn't take as busy as they were then. They
they're
are
twice as busy
twice
now.
as busy. Yeah. The backlog is amazing. Um, it's truly is. And we've had to wait on, several shipments. When you got back, it was 60-day turnaround. And I believe the other day I unpacked a box and it was 12 months from the day that we ordered it. So it has certainly been a massive challenge, a different challenge than going over there and finding the right partner, but we found it. Um, and we've been able to kind of weather the supply chain storm, and hopefully it eases, but as of now it's not. But again, we came through it great. That was November of 2020. It's now November of 2022, 2 years later, and look where we sit.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Probably, almost 3 years to the day of the, buddy's trip where
Yep.
planted the seed. About a year later, I was in Indonesia trying to see if we could make a good glove. And then from there, we got into lots of great things that I think have been ways that we differentiate the product. And I think you kind of start with the coming back to, like, the problem was I didn't know when to change a glove. That was kind of my big thing. I had this glove, and that was like, when I was in college, my coach would give me some new ones. When I get new ones, I'd use them, and
Right.
failing that, I just, getting a hole in it, uh, I didn't know when to kind of swap it out. And it was the idea from Dollar Shave Club. I'd been a Dollar Shave Club customer for years, and I don't know when to change a razor. I would use it till I'd cut myself, or, and when I started with this, razor subscription service, when the razor showed up, I would change the blades. It was
Yeah.
just simple. It made it easier for me. And that was one of our ideas that has really had some legs. We have about 1,200 subscribers now. You don't have to subscribe to our gloves. You can buy them one time only, and lots of people do. And um, and actually most of our subscribers get them, quarterly or bi-monthly. But when the gloves show up, it's that perfect reminder that, hey, maybe it's time to switch this out. Otherwise, without the prompt, how do you know? Is it 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds? Something has to kind of push you to make that change. And I think going back to that buddy's trip, that was one of the things that had held me back. So that's, I think, one of the great sort of innovations that we've brought into this space. Um,
Yeah, there were a couple of key differentiators that you wanted to have in order to make this company distinct from all the others. Like if you just made a golf glove, it's like, well, why will people come to this one instead of that one? So you said, well, I want to use a subscription model, not a mandatory subscription. You should always be able to buy one time, try it out, and then decide. But also, you wanted to have a philanthropic angle too, and that's why we have a Play It Forward program. We both benefited from being helped in our junior days to enjoy the game. We had some good mentors, whether we knew it or not at the time, that introduced us to the game, kept us in the game, because golf has a lot of barriers for entry, and a lot of people might try it once or twice, hit balls in the driving range, but never really feel terribly welcomed at their first kind of entry into the game. So what you wanted to do was just give a little push, give a kid a small token, a gesture of, hey, this is a fun game. This is something that you can remember. This is something you can have fun with. And so that's our Play It Forward program, where when you buy a glove, we give a glove.
yeah, I mean, that came from that sort of visioning exercise, thinking, 5 to 7 years down the road, what does Red Rooster Golf look like? And we'd have some way that we were giving back to the game and helping to grow it and make it more welcoming and inviting. And you could work with lots of different partners, and there's no shortage of them. Lots of them doing great things at the grassroots level in golf. But we thought, what can we do with gloves? That's where we're going to kind of that's the space where we're going to be operating. And I remember the call to Brandon at the First Tee Triangle, and we asked him, how many kids went through your First Tee program last year? Something like 15, 1,600. And we said, how many of them had a golf glove? And it was 0.
Yeah.
Right. So that we thought, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if they got a glove when they get introduced to the game? It's a great welcome. It's a great piece of equipment. It's something they can take home from that event and just make it a bit of a wow, and try to remove some of the intimidation from the game. Like it's a complicated game. There's lots of rules. It can feel, a bit stuffy at times and a little bit overwhelming. So anything we can do to make it more welcoming and make it, a little less intimidating. And if that's really where that play it forward ideas come full circle. And now we've got some awesome partners always looking for more. And that's probably where I get the most joy from Red Rooster Golf is the feedback through that program. I remember getting my first glove and being at some of these events, seeing kids get theirs. That's a good feeling.
Yeah, I won't forget the first time that you and I both went to Brandon's First Tee of the Triangle, and they were just wrapping up their session with their group of kids, and one kid who had been given a golf glove tried to give it back because he thought it was rented for the hour, because the clubs that they use during those sessions, they give them back because so many kids run through the program and none of them have golf clubs, so they keep reusing the same ones. But he tried to give it back, and the instructor said, no, that's yours, you keep it. And the look on his face was pretty telling. He got something back from that session. He received something that he could take home with him, and it was pretty cool. So that was kind of my first intro to what it was like to not have much, to go to this program and to leave with something. And it's pretty fulfilling just to look on the kid's face. It was great. So that's
you're right.
That's that
was one of those great moments. And look, I think this is great. I've enjoyed our first podcast here. I think, what we wanted to do is tell a bit of our backstory. How did we get introduced to the game? Where are we at, with the game today? What's a bit of the background on Red Rooster? Where did we get our start? A lot of people are pretty familiar with where we've gone since the Kickstarter and through our first full year of operation, but that's a little sneak peek back. And what we're going to do is, every 2 weeks we'll drop another podcast and give some more insight on our journey with the game. This idea of like waking up your golf glove game and just sort of stepping up and seeing some great changes in the game of golf itself, breaking down some of those barriers, and kind of in just like where we're at in golf and our own journey with it, those ebbs and flows with competition, and just sort of getting to a spot where for me now it's really like a bit of a mental respite, and I probably never enjoyed the game more now. And so to be involved in it through Red Rooster Golf, and to be able to have a platform like this podcast to connect with customers and other just like golf enthusiasts, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, speaking of competition, our next episode will be you caddying for me at Corn Ferry Tour School, and that experience. But for now, we're going to sign off. That was episode 1 of the Red Rooster Golf Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. For my partner, Kerry Moher, I am Brad Fritsch. We'll see you again soon. Until then, tee it high, let it fly, and cock-a-doodle-doo.